Welcome to another episode of Inspired Careers Spotlight on Careers. This is Cathy Lanzalaco, and my guest today is Ben Albert. Ben is the founder and owner of Balbert Marketing, and I'm really excited to have him on. And in full transparency, I have been on his podcast, and we're going to talk about that a little bit today. And the reason I brought him on here and asked him to speak with us is because so much of what he does crosses into the career space, and his career journey has been really interesting. And of course, here on Spotlight on Careers, that's why we talk to people about interesting pieces of their journey and things that they've gone through, experiences they had that have a wide appeal to a lot of people relative to career development. So welcome, Ben.
I'm happy to be here, Kathy. As I've said, Lanzalaco, it's like my favorite last name of all time. Love it. And I feel blessed to be here with you today.
And I'll tell you, I have embraced the last name very much so since you told me how unique it was. I'm like, that's true. So I'm going with it and I love it. So thank you. So Ben, let's just dive into it. Let's tell us a little bit first about Balbert Marketing. I have numerous things I want to ask you, but first tell us about your business. Tell us a bit about what you do so that people can put that in a bit of context.
Yeah, it's the mysterious one-liner I like to use is I ask questions for a living. And what I mean when I say I ask questions for a living is at Balbert Marketing, we actually produce 5 podcasts. And it's a whole just network of podcasts, 5 Minute Fridays, Learn, Speak, Teach, Real Business Connections, Ben's Bites. I'm forgetting one, Real Hits. And it's my job to ask questions, to do what you're doing today, to ask questions and sift through and find insight and valuable stories from my guests. And in my marketing firm, that's exactly what I do as well. I'm not square peg round hole. I'm not, this is the best thing ever. I'm the greatest. Buy from me. It's all about asking the right questions to get to the core of the right answers and seeing if I can serve them. We all know what marketing is. I'm focused very much on the online realm, the content realm, creating content that sells, creating podcasts that are engaging, but really just making people look great online and make a great first impression online and woo their prospects. But again, it all starts with asking the right questions and seeing where I can serve and where I can be a good fit.
Well, I think that describes you very well when you talk about serving and being a good fit. Because when I think about you, Ben, I think about your business, but I also think of the fact that I don't know that you would talk about this unless I prompted you a bit, but I consider you a thought leader in the industry. And what I mean by that is not only in terms of marketing, but in terms of the information that you share and the path that you have created forward relative to authenticity and networking and really stepping out of the traditional roles that people carve for themselves. And, at the risk of saying like a jack of all trades, because that's not how I see you, I see your strength of the marketing and your appeal is really based in your authenticity. And if you don't agree with me, tell me.
No, I love it. I love
Okay,
it.
good. Good.
I I'm being myself, and we've all been through this. A lot of people are going through a career change or they're unhappy with an employer. And I remember I'm not going to say the business, but I was a manager at a business and I wasn't the general manager. And during my review, my lowest score was in innovation. They gave me like a 2 or 3 out of 5 in innovation. And anyone who knows me knows I'm coming up with like 10 new ideas a day. I'm always like have my hands on something new and exciting. And I love to innovate. But the reason given to me was since you're not in a decision making role, it's not your job to innovate. So this is just a technicality. I know you're a creative person, but since you're not in a decision making role, I can't give you a high score here because it's not your job to. And that was one of those moments that I realized that I need to be creative and I need to be authentic. And now that I'm honing that creativity and I don't find myself in a role where I'm unhappy and that creativity isn't actually appreciated, I'm just a lot happier with my career.
So many people develop their careers by unhappy accidents. right? Or happy accidents, right? That what starts out as unhappy turns into a happy accident.
Yeah.
And if we're listening and if we're open, then we can find a fantastic path. But let's kind of start the conversation there about your career journey. You have a really interesting story in terms of what your aha moment was and kind of how you decided how to turn around the very bad situation that you were in into a positive one. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. And first, I'm going to say this to start. I feel like I got lucky. I feel blessed. A lot of hard work went into everything I did, but none of it's to impress. It's just to impress upon people that opportunities exist. And if you put the luck in your favor, you can make it easier. But I feel lucky. I mean, it was a disaster scenario, right? Because COVID hits, we all went through this. And in my scenario, I was actually furloughed from work and I had a role waiting for me at that company, but it was like a temporary, we can't pay our employees because we don't have space for them. And the company's
Yeah.
great. I had a role waiting for me, but by the time that role came back, I just was so disenchanted, personal reasons, that I decided not to go back. And in deciding not to go back, I was even more lost than before because COVID's happening. I'm applying for jobs. I don't have Cathy to help me out, so I'm not getting any jobs. And I was in a dark spot. It was like there was two things happening, right? So there's self-discovery. I'm hiking more than ever. I'm reading more than ever. I'm revamping my resume and looking for what's my next career move. I want a place where I'm more satisfied. I'm doing all the self-work. And at the same time, a whole nother silo that was happening at the same time was I was binge drinking and overeating and miserable. And I'd spend 2 days where I wouldn't leave the house and I would just binge on Netflix and drunk half the day and really taking things I did in college and reliving it as an adult.
Yeah.
And it was really freaking destructive. So all this is happening at once, and I'm basically like laying on this bed behind this green screen behind me here. This actually isn't my house, but I'm laying on this bed and I'm basically looking at like an empty handle of Jim Beam that I had drank in the course of the weekend, and I just felt lost. And it's this is where I feel like I got lucky. I sat my ass up, I opened up this laptop in front of me, and I went on LinkedIn. And the first thing I did is I started trying to revamp my I basically took my cover letter that I was using for, job interviews and just copy pasted it into LinkedIn and workshopped it a little bit. Um, and we can get into this more, but I basically just started reaching out to people online, networking, getting to know people. And I was so just excited and enthralled with the opportunity that this networking thing and this LinkedIn and this growth mindset. I started focusing on the right end here, where the happiness and the growth and the hiking and the experience and the networking, and I shifted away from that drinking and doubled down on the connections. And again, we can get into it, but I built my business on rolling out of bed, opening my laptop, and just getting to work. And I want to stop there because so much has happened since then, but I want to give you an opportunity to comment or speak, Cathy.
Yeah. Well, Ben, the reason I asked you to share that is because I hear these stories all day long
Mm,
from people that have lost their jobs for one reason or another. And when COVID hit, so many people, I mean, as everybody I was talking to at the time had lost their jobs. Now, not so much now, but
hmm
organizations are going through a different shift now. And now the people are losing their jobs. It's COVID related, but it's not that mass shutdown because of it. A lot of different things are happening. And of course, we talk about this great resignation. People want to leave. I talked to a gentleman the other day who just up and quit just because he was done,
Hmm,
right? Nothing to do tomorrow, just quit. So,
there you go.
people are doing it. But I think it's important because many people have been there at that edge of despair, and it's really easy to get into bad habits. I've been very open, reluctantly at first, but I've been very open to share my health journey. And I have lost 85 pounds over the past year, not because I was ever particularly heavy, but I put on 85 pounds starting my business, getting into stress eating and so forth. So People resonate with that. They resonate with the struggle, and not out of gladness for your struggle, but because they see themselves. So what I love about your story is there was no massive flashing of light in the sky. There was nobody banging on your door that you had to hit rock bottom, that, you had all these other terrible things happen. And listen, there are people that have been there, and it's full respect for it. But I think so many people are in that one. It's just the one day you have to make that decision. And what are you going to do with that? How are you going to replace that destructive behaviors with one that is going to take you into different places, and starting out a journey when you don't know where you're going, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about. You just started networking and talking to people, but you didn't know how it would end up, did you? You didn't have a really clear path.
I took one intentional step, and I think that's a key there. I didn't take a massive leap into the abyss. I took one intentional step, and then the next day I took another intentional step. And I still feel like I have better momentum now than I did this. I started my business in September of 2020. I have better momentum now than ever, but it's just because my tempo keeps getting quicker as I take, one step at a time.
I do believe that the universe rewards energy, and it
Mm,
rewards intention. But intention, doesn't mean sitting around wishing for things to happen. It means
right.
doing things intentionally and creating our experiences. And it's easy to get caught up in those destructive, self-pitying um, activities. And it's part of being human. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with going through that, but going through it for a season and making a decision on the other end. So then, Ben, what shifted it for you? So, you started networking, you started reaching out, but what was kind of that tipping point? Because I think that's sometimes where people get stuck. At what point do you say, when is something going to come out of this? When's something going to be happen? What was your tipping point that you said, I am on the right track here?
It's funny because I ask questions like this, and I'm thinking to myself because I can't think of a specific tipping point, but I can take you a little bit through the journey. And we don't have to hold a whole conversation on this, but it all started with a side hustle. So in 2016, I started a music podcast. It's called Rochester Groovecast, hyper local for the Rochester music scene. And I did this on the side for 5 years, promoting bands, booking bands, going to shows, getting into places for free. That was really the thing. I wasn't making a lot of money doing this, but I got to collaborate with incredible people that were creative and moving the needle in the artistic scene in Rochester. And I got into places for free and got to have great conversations. So I was doing this for 5 years. So it wasn't like tipping point, like quit my job, I'm no longer going to do this anymore, I'm going for it was a steady gradual
Mm-hmm.
process for me, where when I was in this moment where I decided that I wanted to give entrepreneurship a shot, I had already had a side hustle for almost 5 years at the time, and it was through booking, promotion, podcasting, marketing. And I was a marketing sales executive for a large firm. So I had the corporate experience, I had the big business experience, but I also had the hands-on personal approach with everything I was doing with my side hustle. So my whole point there is I don't encourage people to just quit their job and follow their passion. I think it's bad advice, but I do encourage them to immediately follow that passion in a side hustle and figure out how you can sidestep into it, or at least have that going forever the rest of your life. Have a side hustle. If your work doesn't light you up, that's okay, especially if you're feeding your kids, you're making money, and you're happy enough. Start the side hustle. So that all happened. So I guess the tipping point really is making that decision to get an LLC. I guess I'd give that to the I didn't even realize that I could just be a freelancer and do jobs without an LLC. I had no business background in that regard. So the tipping point was basically spending my stimulus check on getting an LLC, setting up a website, and on a whim, I started what is now today Rochester Business Connections. Kathy, I didn't have a name. I was like messaging people on LinkedIn being like, I'm new, I'm a new business. I was so excited. That's the thing. My conviction and my passion was there. I was messaging people and I was saying, hey, I'm a brand new business owner. I am starting a podcast. I think I'm going to call it like Rochester Business Connections or Rochester Business Conversations or Rochester Speaks, or I don't know, but as a business owner, I'd love to have a conversation with you and see if you'd be interested in being on the show. And it all started with cold outreach. I sent hundreds of messages. Not everybody accepted my LinkedIn request. But the people that did, I sent a message like that. I said, hey, Cathy, I don't think we've met yet, but I'm a business owner and I'm really passionate about this podcast I'm going to launch. I've had this music podcast where I had politicians on, I had artists, so I kind of used what I had done. But I was cold messaging strangers, Cathy, total strangers. And for the people that actually responded, again, you're not going to reach everybody. The people that actually responded, I'd say over 50% were down to do the podcast. They wanted to help a young business person that was looking to do something different. And that's the major tipping point. I guess the tipping point one is set up an LLC. Then I'm just all over the place using my sales background to cold message strangers and try to make friends, and made a bunch of friends, and then did a 22 episode launch in November of 2020. So we did an episode a day, Monday through Friday, 22 days in a month. And still to this day, that was my worst month for listenership of all time. I feel bad for my starting cast because they didn't get as many listeners. So I put out more episodes but had less listeners. So that's not good, right? But that's where I got started. And by meeting those 22 people and having a conversation with them and asking them for help and doing work for free in a lot of cases. I did a lot of work just for free, freelance style. Um, Rest is history. The connections grow. You meet one person, they introduce you to two, they introduce you to zero, but then another person introduces you to five. That person introduces you to, and nowadays I have like five best friends that I didn't know a year ago. And I'm rambling, but the whole point was I gave it a shot. I was open-minded to meet people. I networked. And today, money aside, money is not why I do this, but I'm actually generating more income for myself than as a sales executive in my previous role. So I've replaced my income and have all the control. And what more can you ask for? Do I work more hours? Yes. But it's so worth it. And again, it's not to impress anybody, it's to impress upon them that it's possible, and it's not easy, but it's worth it. And I'll stop there, Cathy. I could go all day. I'm excited to be talking to you about this.
I'm excited to hear it because I think, again, it so resonates with so many people. And I think that the piece that stops so many people from taking their side hustle further, or from taking that chance on themselves, is the fear of not knowing every step of the way and how it's going to turn out, when indeed they have the power to create whatever they want. And it is about one step, just taking one step at a time. Some people don't have the appetite for that. They just don't, and that's okay. But the ones that do, that's all you really need, is to take the one step at a time. And I, like you, that's how I started resume writing. One day I got the idea to do it, and I Googled resume writing online. And then before you know it, I got hooked up with somebody. And it just kind of was I don't even know how it started, right? And
Yeah.
then here we are several years later, and I have a thriving business, and I'm so grateful for what's happened and the people I serve. But I think the other thing is, I hear vulnerability in the way that you attacked it initially, going to people to say, I'm new, this is what I want to do. I think a lot of people don't like to do that, and sometimes it's difficult not to always be the expert right out the bat, and to ask for help, don't you think?
100%. But what I've discovered is people are so much more genuine and willing to help than you ever imagined. And 80% of people actually might not be. But you'll find that 20% if you make that effort to find that 20% that you gel with.
Yeah. And I think I've said this before, and I offered to I offered to serve a lot of people for free. And I offered to put myself up for a lot of stuff. And I'm always surprised by the people that don't respond. And then, I used to take it very personal and think, well, what is it about me that nobody wants to talk to me here?
Mm,
And then over time, you come to realize and say, it's not the right alignment. I'm not for everybody. Or how about this, which is the real reason, is it's not about me. It's about whatever they have going on at the time and whatever their
mm,
vision is. And just because it's not aligned at the time, you can't take that personal. So if you
no.
reach out to 50 people and 5 respond, be grateful for the 5, nurture those relationships and let the other 45 go. And I think sometimes, again, that's where people get hooked up on that with the rejection factor. And the reality is, it isn't rejection, it truly is redirection. And once you embrace that as an entrepreneur, it really starts opening up other opportunities for you, and your confidence goes up as well.
Mm. I couldn't agree more. I'm imagining a staircase,
Yeah.
and we're talking about one step at a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the no's are still steps.
Mm-hmm.
So we step on the no, we step on the yes, we step on the no, we step on the yes. Maybe we hop 3 steps,
Yeah.
but those no's are still steps. And sometimes I move a little bit too quick up that staircase and I fall on my face, but I'm still moving forward, right?
Yeah, and sometimes everything you do doesn't work out exactly the way that you wanted to, but that's okay
Right.
because you've tried something. You have to be willing to fail. And for those that are listening that may have been fired from a job,
Mm,
may have been downsized and they had nothing to do with that, that too is not honestly rejection. It is just a misalignment. And from there, wonderful things can happen. But it's about grieving, going through the grieving process, because either way, if you've lost something that you did not intend to lose, you still have to work your way through that, but don't live there. And there is a lot of opportunity on the other side. And I don't know how long you had worked at that company, Ben, but I lost what I call my big fat HR job about 5 or 6 years ago. It was a fabulous job, fabulous
yeah.
people, and the business closed. It was a grieving process. And even some days I wake up and go, oh, I don't have to go to work there. Oh, and it's a little sad. But then I say, oh, but I get to go to work for me. Yay, me.
Hmm.
So you have to be able to work through it, but there is always life on the other side. Let's talk about your podcast. Let's talk about particularly Rochester Business Connections and talk a little bit about who the audience for that has primarily been.
So it's as obvious as it sounds. So Rochester Business Connections. It's Rochester business people, thought leaders. Well, my guests are generally business people, thought leaders, entrepreneurs, movers and shakers in the Rochester area. And then the audience is across the board. I wish that there was analytics that I could truly peer into the profile of my audience. But just looking at stats, it's a lot of salespeople. It's a lot of entrepreneurs, intrapreneurs. One thing I've discovered is people that are revenue driven often are also personal development driven. They want to be better because that's how they feed their family. That's how
Yeah.
they put a roof over their head. So my listenership, it's across the board. And I wish I could just name everybody because I'd like to think that I'm reaching as many people as possible. But it's really anyone who's growth hungry, and they're primarily business related conversations. We get on tangents. We talk about meditation. We talk about literally anything, meditation to actionable tips to telling stories, to getting into more of the nuances of how to be successful in business. So it's really anybody who likes personal development and likes business. There's definitely an episode or two for you. And it is hyper localized to Rochester because I know David Schaub's doing a great job with WNY Entrepreneur. You're doing an incredible job with Inspire Careers and all your shows. There was a little bit of a void in Rochester from what I had experienced.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually more podcasts out that I didn't know about, and great ones like Andrew Biernat's Build Your Business Better and Time Out with Leaders, Kevin Rustici and Tyler White. Well, I just want to name them all, but Normal Lies with Linda Healer. There's amazing podcasts coming out of Rochester, but there felt like there was a void. So rather than going so far stretching to try to reach the world, I was like, let me reach my local community. Let me make as big of a difference locally first. And nowadays, the vision's far more national.
Fantastic. What is the issue that the main issue? Is there a main issue that you're seeing that organizations are struggling with? When you're talking to business owners, is there a common theme in today's world that's coming up so often that you find yourself talking about?
Mm, it's a really good question. The easy answer is COVID.
Yeah.
Um,
Too easy, Ben. Go back. Go back
that's
to the
the
drawing board.
that's the easy answer. Um, with COVID is mitigating not being able to meet in person and having to deal with staring at a screen all day and the virtual burnout.
Oh,
These are very common concerns. I I'm such an optimist that I'm pausing because I don't really see many of the struggles, but as I think about it, I see them a little bit more. I think people are lacking connection. They're lacking
yes.
that in person feel. They're
Mhm.
lacking that office environment. And I think that's part of where my podcast and conversations like this can actually provide a little bit of solace and a little bit of a helping hand. Um, Ultimately to let people know that it's okay and that we're all feeling this way and we're all burnt out, and let's be positive and let's talk about ways we can be optimistic about our scenario, because COVID sucks, the virtual burnout sucks, not being able to meet people in person without being like, oh my gosh, I have a party at my grandmother's next, the stress is incredible, and that's just underlying in all of our lives. But my only point here is that it's okay. And I try not to focus too much on it in the podcast. We more focus on, okay, let's find an answer to this.
Love
Let's
it.
find a solution to this struggle.
Love it. And I would agree that I find a common thread that I'm hearing with my clients too is about the stress. And
Mm,
it's stress that sometimes they don't even recognize because they're so busy moving forward and trying to take care of their families and get through the day to day. But there's always that undercurrent that I can kind of
mm,
tell, and particularly the more I get to know them. And I completely agree with you, moving beyond that and saying, okay, but what can I do about that? Not living in the land of stress, but to say, but what can I do for myself and for my environment, and how can I change that up? Is really the best way to get out of anything is to just start walking. And that was the earlier conversation we had about your entire career. And it really is the application to so many things.
yeah. Just
Absolutely.
just keep moving.
So what's next? Because I know, we talk about all these podcasts you have. We talk about Balbert Marketing. We talk about your work with nonprofits, and I know that you're working with the Alzheimer's Association as well. I see you all over LinkedIn because we're very connected in that regard. And you're doing a lot in the communities. What is next for you personally? Not necessarily Balbert Marketing, but what's next for you as we have a fresh new 2022 we're
Hmm.
ripping on the calendar for? What's going on this year?
So I've been thinking about this, and as you were speaking, I'm kind of defining it in my head because I've been thinking about this. But this year is kind of the year of yes for me. So last year was a very much the year of uncertainty, the year of growth, the year of exploration, the year of just asking questions and hoping that I can build a business that's sustainable. Now I'm confident that I have one, and it's the year of yes, that I would just want to attract as much opportunity as possible. I want to speak as many events as I can. I want to speak on as many podcasts as I can. I want to break records for the amount of podcasts I put out, personal records, break records for the podcasts I put out. I'm working with the longest day to fight Alzheimer's. Later in the year, I'm going to be fighting diabetes, and I worked with cystic fibrosis last year, so I want to be involved with that. And I'm pausing because I realized to myself that this is something that's going to overwhelm me. It's going to be frustrating. And I realize that I need to get better at saying no. I've actually gotten better at saying no to opportunities that don't serve me. But this is the year of saying yes to anything that I believe serves me and the people I'm trying to help. Next year I haven't defined yet, but the year next year is probably going to be the year of like sharpening the saw and
Mhm.
being hyper focused on the future. But now that I have momentum, I want to like run as quickly as possible. So this is the year of yes, So if anyone wants to have a conversation, have me on their podcast, have me come to an event, and welcome me to a networking meeting, I will likely say yes. And if it's not a good fit, then we'll just part as friends. But we'll just call this year the year of yes, the year of opportunity, the year of growth for not just me. We should do like a hashtag year of yes and get people on board to make this many of our years of yes, where the opportunities come to us and we're not afraid to take them.
Love it. Love it.
I literally just came up with that on the spot, and now I'm like, oh my God, this is my life journey now.
It
I'm
is,
sticking
and it's
to it.
remarkable. And you know what? You can say yes today and no tomorrow, folks. So if something that
Mm.
you say yes to doesn't serve you, you find out that you bit off more than you can chew, you can always go back and say thank you, but no thank you. But how do you know unless you say yes? That reminds me of something that I do every year, which is a silly thing, completely unrelated to careers. But every year I try to get myself exposed to new food, like a new food, a new
Mm.
vegetable or something. Like that's how I've learned over time to like different fruits and vegetables that I hadn't liked before. I mean, I could say I want to try a snickerdoodle, but you know, I really don't need that challenge. So, so this year is the year of the oyster for me because I like clams. I
Mm.
don't like oysters and I refuse to eat a mussel. So this year, so I put it on my calendar and I literally spend the year keep going back to it. And that's how I've gotten to like Brussels sprouts and a couple other things. And it is about saying yes and saying at some point, I think it's good for me. I just am not sure yet. And I just will continue to try it in different forms to
Mm.
see if I can get there. And at the end of the day, it's not a deal breaker for my life. If I have to say no, I say no. Yours is much more laudable. Mine's a vegetable, but same idea. You got to say
I,
yes.
I couldn't agree more because I'll be the first to admit that I'll pivot if I find that this isn't serving me anymore. And I'll say no and be like, okay, year of yes ended after 6 months. But yeah, go in committed to it. And if we have to say no and have to pivot, we can do that as well.
I love it. Well, I think we're going to leave it on that today, but I am going to throw
Mm.
out the offer that in when I drop the podcast and I'm going to put Ben's contact information. Ben is absolutely sincere about wanting to have the conversations. Reach out and just talk to him for nothing else. He's an absolute delight, and he's got that Perry Como voice going on. So we absolutely, he's a joy to talk to.
Mm.
And you never know what may came out of it. And he truly is a connector and does want to establish those relationships. So I can vouch that anything he's saying is legit. So don't stand on ceremony. Don't hesitate to reach out if you want to have him on your podcast or you want to talk to him. And then I will just say thank you, Ben, so very much. I am so grateful for our meeting. And I'm not even sure how we ended up meeting, but it feels like I've known you a much longer time than I have. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to switch the tables around and to ask you the questions this time.
Yeah, I'm excited. I think we met through Nick Koziel. I
Maybe
butchered
we
his
did.
name.
Yeah. Nick,
That
yeah.
sounds terrific podcast, and he's leading the charge in this longest day Alzheimer's with a
Yeah.
few other. So yeah, I think it was through Nick. But isn't it funny how the gaps just get bridged
Mm-hmm.
when you network with like-minded people that want to help?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I find myself now with a close circle of people that I look forward to talking to and seeing all the time, including you,
Mm,
Ben.
I feel the same way. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me today. I'll drop Ben's contact information in the comment section. Reach out. If you want to ask any questions here, Ben and I'll come back and we'll answer those as well too. So go ahead and do that. And I appreciate your time today. Thanks again, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. I'm going to add one more thing for the
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
I respond to every email and every single message. However, if your message looks canned or uncreative or like you're just trying to take value, I will probably criticize you. And I'll do it with love, but send me a personalized message. Tell me what your biggest takeaway from this conversation. Tell me something you read in my profile, or tell me a way you'd like to collaborate and provide mutual value. So do that. And I will respond to your message. And Kathy, I'm just tremendously grateful that you had me on. I could do this a million times. You're the best.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for everything. All right, listeners, good to talk to y'all today. Happy to be here. And Ben, best wishes on Balbert Marketing. And I am excited to continue to see what you come up with every day.